about Illuminati, since the charting up Dux. Is it Disney mind control? Is this MK Ultra Deluxe? Occult Disney, go wish upon a star. Occult Disney, should know what to chat for. Occult Disney, Pineal Gland, Pinocchio. Occult Disney, as above, so below. Pinocchio seeks fun on Pleasure Island, where traffickers meet just fallen minds. Captain Hook, a lost boy in Neverland, saving kids from Peter Pan's designs. Nemo feels to survive the Barracuda, and that nobody needs no one. Snow White never took another breath. Bird Prince, the angel of death has come. Occult Disney, we go from real to real. Occult Disney, Bohemian Grove and no more real. Occult Disney, ask about to Illuminati. Occult Disney, we teach occult to everybody. Occult Disney, go wish upon a star. Occult Disney, you know what to chat for. Oh, Occult Disney, the new brand Pinocchio. Yeah, yeah. Occult Disney, it's above so below. Occult Disney, please enjoy the show.
Hello, welcome to the Occult Disney podcast. It's where we flight into jumps of fancy with the magical whimsy of Fantasia 2000. This is Matt here. As always, joining me is the Paranoid American. How you doing?
No.
Okay, that's cool. You did need some kind of different response with your mask today, which we have. It's kind of got the creepy poo vibes, the blood and honey vibes. I guess because the ears are a little bit harder to see. Maybe that's why.
This was a custom Etsy creation. I should probably link the person who made it. Maybe I'll do that if I remember.
Yeah. It's got the mood lighting. We had to work out the mood lighting beforehand. So if you are doing this audio, sorry, you could find it on YouTube. And
you're missing out. This was the other lighting option, but we went a little bit creepier. There we go.
So today it's Fantasia 2000, kind of returning to the well in a weird way. You were dreading this one for months, I believe, coming up.
I was, although now I've got another one to start dreading, but I'm not going to say which one that is. I'll let everyone figure it out as we get to it. But this one, I was glad that I stuck out with it because I really, I got to take this off. I love the look of it, but I need to be able to see and breathe. The first few that they start this with are horrible, and we'll talk about them in detail. But I just didn't like anything about a lot of them until it got to the whales part. But the biggest one is that every time I went to go and watch Fantasia, I got a habit of I'll go and download. I'm an absolute digital pirate. So whenever we go and watch a new movie, I just go and grab whatever version if I don't have a copy of it already. And usually what I'll do is I'll look for the remasters or the 8K or the 12K remaster with, the Dolby and whatever the latest one is that has the greatest compression and all that, I'll snatch it. So when I went looking for the original Fantasia, I didn't realize that it was a completely different movie. I figured Fantasia 2000 was oh, maybe they put it in surround sound, or maybe they improved and took out some. Nah, it's not like that at all. It's basically its own movie. And I guess as a little bit of a preface to this one, the concept of Fantasia, according to this movie, which I don't believe, even if you find me a quote that Walt agreed to this, but that Fantasia was always kind of meant to be this different experience each time. You'd see different cartoons, you'd hear different music, and then it was almost going to be a nod to that old classic animation where a whole, maybe like a whole orchestra would travel around with a movie and play it for an audience. And so every time you went to see it, it would be kind of unique. So that's not the vibe that I got from anything Fantasia related, the old one or the new one, even though they kind of pushed it as that. And this one, it is this like overproduced sort of way of saying like, well, here's what maybe it was going to be, but it didn't quite get there. And there was some cool stuff. They tease all these really cool animations that didn't make the cut, including Salvador Dali's, which we also watched independently just so we could talk about it, because that was kind of supposed to be in this one, but I think it was deemed too adult, or maybe it wasn't done on time. But yeah, I dislike Fantasia 2000 because every time I went to look for Fantasia, this one would come up. I'd watch the first couple and then be like, what the hell did I ever see in Fantasia? I don't like this. But now I know. Now I know that Fantasia 2000 is like the direct to video version of Fantasia follow-up to milk a little bit more money out of your pocket.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I have a very strong nostalgia factor for this movie. This is the first thing I saw, like, IMAX in the 90s, you'd go and see like a 30-minute space shuttle film. There was a big thing when I think the Rolling Stones had like a concert in IMAX. But this was like the first movie you could see in IMAX. And it was like Disney animation in IMAX. And I got very blindsided just by the razzle dazzle there. So I, had a good time right at the start of the millennium, unless you want to call 2001 the start of the millennium, which you can if you want. But yeah, I saw it January 1st, 2000. And I do remember going with my father and him pointing out, many of the things wrong with it. Like maybe he wasn't as charmed as I was.
Hell yeah. I like your dad already.
Yeah, because he came. Well, I think both of us came out saying all the celebrity cameos and little intersections were garbage.
It was so bad. It was it was like I wanted my money back, knowing that I had just pirated it off of some online site and was just watching it for free, and I still felt like I was owed something because of some of those little interstitial segments.
I took the pirate route too, but that's just because I was too lazy to go into the next room and get the disc. But
right, yeah, same here. Anything I've ever pirated, I own a physical copy of. It's merely for convenience. That's right. All the.
Oh no, I really am that lazy though. I'm just pointing out that I'm often that lazy. It's right over there, but I can put it in now. I'm on a newer computer. It's faster. It's great. It's just so much easier. And
I think too, I guess with you seeing it when it first came out, you also have a little bit of that, like when you go and see Toy Story for the first time, when it first came out, everything looks impressive. And then you watch it 20 years later and it's maybe not as impressive. So I kind of felt like there's a lot of that going on in this movie too. I did not see it when it first came out. If I saw it the year, or even the first 5 years after it came out, I'd probably have a different recollection of it. But I've only seen this one in the last, I don't know, like 2 or 3 years. And it was only when I was looking for the original Fantasia.
I mean, I when I got it on Blu-ray, it came. I was getting it for the original, right? And it just came with Fantasia 2000. And my daughter's like 3 at the time, so Fantasia was too long and too much. Whereas I guess this one is a little easier to show to a kid. If maybe you don't want to show it to a kid, but I did once. Yeah, it wasn't a regular rotation.
That's almost child abuse.
I play in orchestras, and I was like, oh, maybe this is a way to, get her to have an ear for a little bit of classical, So that was part. But yeah, that did not take. Maybe it was child abuse because it was only an hour, and we didn't get back to it because it didn't take. It's not a movie. I mean, even this one isn't like that appealing to a kid. But
I love the idea though. Like if they had removed all of the stupid, sort of like profile shots with the celebrities, and just made it be the thing that they said it was going to, like they keep interrupting it to let you know, oh, by the way, this movie is supposed to be an audio experience. Like you're just supposed to hear music and see really cool visuals that go with those music. That's all this was meant to be. And I'm just wondering, like, yes, so like, why the hell are you talking to me right now? And man, the one that hurt the worst was when they show the little clips from Salvador Dali in another one. And they're like, here's some really cool ideas. They didn't make the cut, but look at that. Okay, now let's see something inferior. And that would be, I don't know why any of that existed in this second Fantasia 2000 movie.
The Disney war actually gets into this movie a lot because this is the point when Eisner's run is starting to splinter and people aren't quite as happy with him. So Roy Disney, little Roy, not big, big Roy's dead, but little Roy Disney, little Roy, that sounds condescending. Anyway, this was his big project. He's like, I'm going to bring Disney back to its roots by going back to Fantasia. It cost way too much money. It made almost no money. So this kind of kneecapped his position in the company. One of the other big production things I want to mention is the Rhapsody in Blue section with the Hirschfeld style animation. That was Eisner coming in and demanding it. Like the animators didn't want to do that segment at all.
Was not one of my favorites.
Yeah. So that was one. I mean, Rhapsody is a great tune, but it's one that's kind of dumb. Fantasia is supposed to be about this opulent animation. Simplifying it that much is kind of weird. But maybe we should hit the reverse a bit to the Beethoven segment.
Yeah, I guess we can go a little bit in order. But since you already sort of opened the door to Rhapsody in Blue, I just felt like the critic had already owned that song through their intro credits, that like no other cartoon is kind of allowed to use Rhapsody in Blue unless it's better than the critic. And I mean, this one visually it was interesting. It had like a mid-century modern look to it. But man, every time I heard like the recognizable parts to it, all I wanted to do was turn off Fantasia and put on the critic.
See, I was already playing in orchestras in university and stuff. So I'd recently played the whole thing in the cello section. Of course, Beethoven's Fifth, you can't get out of an orchestra without playing that at some point, I think. The Firebird had done that, yeah. So a lot of this is stuff that, I mean, sitting in the middle of an orchestra in the middle of a symphony is, a pretty fun experience.
Yeah, I wasn't a band nerd.
Right. Well, string nerds dorkier than the band nerds, I think, or at least they're weirder. I think they say cellos are the weirdos in the orchestra.
I grew up playing piano and keyboards, and it always completely blew my mind that was never really a position in any of the school sort of sponsored music. Like they might teach you on the piano, and the teacher would have the piano and play it, but that was never really afforded to any of the kids. Like none of the kids got to be the piano player. You know what I mean? Like
you have to be the concertist.
Home.
Yeah, if you want to play with the orchestra, you got to be a concerto player. Which maybe you're that good. I don't know, but you have to be like exceptionally good for that.
Let's just assume I am. Let's just assume I am or was.
Okay, then you can play with an orchestra up front. I mean, I have a concert next month. That's what's we have the triple concerto where there's a piano up front and they toss up another cello player and a violin player and they wail away. Yeah, that's certain points. I guess I don't know. Do we have anything else to say about the Gershwin segment? I don't feel like it's kind of like it's like reading a 50s Reader's Digest, isn't it? Or New York.
Yeah, I mean, we can go in order. I've got some observations that build thematically, because I still watch this as if it were a movie and not just a whole bunch of disjointed musical animations, which it kind of is, but I feel like I might have uncovered some occult knowledge.
Okay, go for that, because I was trying to be like, can I thread this together? Watching
I definitely can. I got some gold, I think. At least in the context of this show that we do.
Yeah, the Firebird at the end is that's one where you're like, I don't know if there'll be anything in Fantasia 2000. I'm like, well, you got the Firebird sequence, which has...
and it's not just the Firebird sequence. So yeah, so I guess I'll go through some of my notes top down and just stop me if there's ones that you want to chime in on. But it starts out, and the first thing I notice is that it is in surround sound, which there might be some versions of the original Fantasia. The one that I remember watching recently was just stereo, but this one for sure was like a surround sound version, which I don't even know if it added to the experience or took away from it. I'm not sure that it was like a plus or a minus for me on this particular watch through. Did you notice the original movie if you had a surround sound version or if this one had surround sound?
Well, again, I was just watching a file last night, so I don't know what it had. I do know the Blu-ray has 5.1, so for both. So there is surround sound mix because the original Fantasia had that thing where the Roadhouse version, you would have to like install speakers and stuff into your movie theater to do the roadshow version, the original Fantasia. And maybe that's why this was like an IMAX thing. You know, we still want to have these like specifications if you're going to enjoy our finest animation. Was the intention at least.
Yeah, I guess that's a fair point, because if you're going to see it in the IMAX theater, not only are the visuals going to be upgraded, but like the audio and the number of audio fields and speakers and everything would be too. So I could definitely see it being a much more immersive experience from the audio alone, let alone the visuals. Because I guess if you close your eyes, it's still a really good performance. Yeah,
that might have also gotten me a bit in seeing it the first time, because up to that, well, I'd seen the Rolling Stones concert in IMAX, but yeah, so that was good audio, I guess, for the 90s. But yeah, this again was I don't know, I guess you can also go see an orchestra, and that's kind of cooler, but yeah.
Well, and this one again, it's probably the worst aspect of this movie is how much they tell you what's happening. Like I would prefer that no human being spoke at any point, and you just put it on and it ended and that was the whole movie. But alas, that's not what we get here. And in the beginning, they kind of describe that there's 3 kinds of music, and right away it was like rubbing me wrong, because so the 3 kinds were: one kind of music tells a story, the second kind of music says that there's no plot but it paints pictures, and then the third type of music is music that exists simply for the tone's sake, like that there's no need for a story and there's no need to paint pictures or anything. And then they go on to say that Fantasia music is that third kind, which makes no sense to me, because it's like, but you're literally using it to tell a story. And then also, I would just immediately thought, like, where does clowncore or where does like Venetian snares or noisecore fit into those 3 types? Does clowncore tell a story? I don't know. Does clowncore have something that paints pictures? I don't think so either. And then does it exist simply for tone's sake? Maybe. Does noisecore exist for tone's sake? I guess it's right in the name of noise, but I don't know. Like, do you have any thoughts on? Do you know what clowncore is? Can I start with that?
I'm thinking of Juggalos. Is that the right path?
It is not. Clowncore are two guys that it came out way later, but they went to like Juilliard, I think. Like, they were legitimate, academic musicians, but they formed this band where they just go into the first album. They perform entirely in a porta potty, and it's just like all noisecore. If you know what noisecore is, it's just like like. And then the second album, they upgrade into a van, and they just are driving around and going through like drive-throughs, and then just rocking out in the back of like a Dodge Caravan or something. But I think more of it is like half performance art, but the music has like some legitimate merit to it, because again, like there's music theory involved. But the whole time that they're describing this in this Fantasia, I'm wondering, where does clowncore fit in? Like which category? Because they're definitely not tell a story, and I don't think they're paint a picture. So that means that it also would fall into music for tone's sake. So
that may be dumbing down the general idea of how music was made over the years. So if you go Baroque stuff, early 18th century, that's Telemann, Bach, Vivaldi. That's trying to evoke the music of the spheres. A lot of it's sacred music, right? So the point is to praise God, praise reality through music. By the end of the century, you get to Haydn and Mozart, and now it is the artist is creating the music, but you're trying to just create like a bauble. A Mozart symphony is supposed to be like a Fabergé egg or something like that. So that's, you could call that all the music for sound's sake if you wanted to. One of the big things with Beethoven is he's the first composer to say put his personal emotions into the music, or at least make it feel like he is. So something like, they start off with Beethoven's Fifth, which is the whole thing is, the struggle and the victory. That's what that symphony is about. The next one's pastoral. There's no story, but it's just like that we got in the original Fantasia. They did like, I think, all of the pastoral. And then about in the mid 19th century, you start getting Wagner and Liszt doing tone poems, which are more distinctly like, I want you to have an image in your head. And by the end of the century, we're getting into the 20th century, we have program music. So maybe Bruckner. I don't remember if he is super programming or not programming, but you would go into a symphony hall and they give you a program like telling you a story through the entire piece of music. So they're dumbing down that basic concept a lot, which maybe that's what's annoying about these live action segments is they're just like they're condescending and the jokes don't hit. I mean, it's like a theme park pre-show video, isn't it?
Well, and I get one of my notes was that I actually wrote down was that this particular movie, it contrasts with the original Fantasia and just my own expectations because it puts all this unnecessary focus on the actual conductor, the actual musicians, like the people. It puts all this focus on the people involved instead of just letting you watch the visuals and hear the music and like decide if there's a story that's coming together or not. It kind of removes some of that magic where it's like, hey, here's what you're about to see. And then you see it. And for me, I'm like fighting against it because like, don't tell me what I'm going to see and what I'm going to hear. I'll tell you, you know what I mean? So
it's like laugh tracks telling you when to laugh.
Yeah, man, this is, I would definitely equate this to like a laugh track, at least the same amount of condescending annoyance of not trusting the audience to put things together. So it almost feels like a babysitter movie. Like you put this thing on and like, you know, oh, the kids are learning today. I didn't abandon them. They're learning.
So yeah, I remember on January 1st, 2000, my dad's first complaint being they just explained the 3 kinds of music and we're going to show you the music for music's sake. And then they show us a story with a bunch of cute damn butterflies. So here's like in the original, it truly is abstractions for the first segment. Here, it gives up on abstractions after about 4 seconds and tries to force a story onto the abstractions, which that was a valid complaint. Yeah. I was blown away by like, look how cool that animation looks on the big screen, you know?
See, and I guess the butterflies is probably one of the better examples of something that would look really impressive the year it came out. But watching it now in retrospect, it's just like, man, this is like a weird digital thing that someone learned a new tool and they found that you can animate, 10,000 shapes on the screen that would normally be fairly impossible or it would have taken a lot of time. But the ability to do it digital, I feel like some of this movie and some of these animations, like I'm just seeing someone geek out on a computer and having fun with like the new features that were unleashed in software and maybe letting that drive more so than like the final visual being something like really impressive or comprehensive. I don't know if I'm like being overly critical of that, but it was just like, you don't need that many butterfly. Like we get it. I get it that, it's abstract and it's all cool, but I don't know. Am I reading too much into that?
I see that. I mean, it's like, a PlayStation 2 game looked really awesome back when the PlayStation 2 was new. Now that's like shorthand for the CGI wasn't so great,
Right. Well, in like the very first Grand Theft Auto game, like the 3D version of it, not the top down, there was actually a previous game made by Rockstar. Man, I can't remember what the hell it was called.
But Bully. It wasn't. No, Bully was later, maybe.
No, yeah, it wasn't Bully. The whole premise of this one is that you were like downtown and people were like rioting, and you had to just go and like smash windows out and like. But there was no real gameplay to it. It was almost like a tech demo engine, just to be like, hey, look at how many 3D characters we can have on the screen at all times, and that's what led to the world of GTA, where anywhere you go, there's people on the corners and they're walking by like they have their own thing going on. The original premise for that was made into like a quote unquote game that just had large crowds of people, and like none of the GTA fun or any of the missions, just lots of people. So I think that I'm relating that to like this butterfly scene in a way where like, okay, yeah, you got some cool toys that you got to play with, but I didn't feel like it was adding anything to it. And like you said, it does take an abstract idea and then they start crafting a story into it. And one of the first points where they're like crafting this story is that all of a sudden you've got these colorful abstract butterflies and light in the clouds and stuff. And then these black bats come from hell essentially. And they start like attacking the butterflies. And you can tell that they're bad because it's got those like really passionate hits from Beethoven, right? And then when they bats will like smash into the colorful butterflies, and then at one point the colorful butterfly is like missing part of its wing, and it's like flopping around like it's about to like lose its life essentially. Which I don't know, I enjoyed what they were trying to do, and the visual was conveying it, but I wasn't feeling like I was watching a Fantasia movie. I felt like I was watching like somebody's portfolio that they just graduated from digital art school.
Well, also, as a musician, I think it's lazy to not repeat the exposition for Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, which does add, it adds 2 minutes. If you're playing his Third Symphony, you can skip it because that adds 7 minutes. But in the Fifth, it adds like 2 minutes. Do it. What's wrong with you? It saves on animation, I guess, is the actual answer. But
so what do we miss out? If that part were included, what does that add? And because you described it before that Beethoven brought in like his own personal emotion into the music. That's an interesting concept because I didn't learn that way of thinking about music, and that makes a lot of sense. So like, what emotion did we leave out by not covering that?
Oh, no, nothing really. It's because you just, it's a repeat, so you just play the first 2 minutes again. Yeah,
beat for beat again, no variation.
Yeah, no variation. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm being a little snarky here, but it's there's different ways movements of a symphony can be written. So this one is sonata form, meaning it's got an exposition where you state two contrasting themes. You follow that with your development where you play with the themes. Then you restate the themes. That is a little different than how you did at the start, and maybe you do a coda at the end. I don't think this one has a coda, or if it does, it has a really short one.
And I guess the last main note on this butterfly intro animation is that it doesn't feel timeless. You know what I mean? Like watching it now, it feels a little dated because the 3D aspect, I guess, but it's missing this quality that the original Fantasia had, and even some of the other segments in this movie. I would even say that Rhapsody in Blue, even though it feels a little bit oddball and it doesn't really fit into this, it does feel more timeless than this butterfly sequence.
But you want to put a narrative on the whole movie, so do you want to paint that on this, or do you want to save that for the end?
What do you mean?
You like the original, you had found kind of a narrative thread through everything, right?
Oh yeah. So yeah, well, this one does have it, and it comes up in the animation segment that comes directly after this butterfly one. So the butterfly one is sort of an introduction, and I think it's letting you know that this isn't like your grandma's Fantasia. Like, we're killing butterflies in this one. So like, strap in. And it felt for like two different things. One,
all the dinosaurs die in the original Fantasia.
Okay, fair enough. But it's done a little artistically. It's a fair point. But this one also, it gets you strapped in and ready. Like, it's going to be a little traumatic because we're showing these, like, right off the bat, here's these bats that are attacking these harmless butterflies. At least the dinosaurs, they kind of get killed from meteors from outer space and lava. And then it shows that, new life spawns from that. In this one, it's just like demons are going to come out of hell and destroy everything that you love. Color and music and beauty are all going to be destroyed by these, bats out of hell. But it's not a timeless look for it. But it also seems that this could give people seizures. So in addition to just the normal traumatization of, here's this beautiful thing, okay, now watch us destroy it, Fight Club style. But I also feel like all the flashes of color that was missing, that wasn't in the original Fantasia, and there has to be a non-zero number of people that have gone into an actual epileptic fit because of this movie in particular. Like, you can't convince me otherwise.
Maybe. I guess I was lucky. I was one of the lucky ones. I didn't have convulsions in the.
Well, do you have epilepsy?
No, I don't.
well, there you go, I guess.
I was just thinking in general. I'm thinking of The Simpsons, where they're in Japan and the Pokemon comes on and the entire family starts pitching on the floor.
Well, that's like the haunted. What's our haunted arcade machine? Poly something or other. Poly.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but
that's brain. One of those things that's rumored to like have an effect on everyone no matter what. But I feel like if something like that did exist, it would be more that it can trigger someone's existing epilepsy or like an existing condition. Kind of like, I think this movie might be able to trigger that. Like you would know. You're like one of those people. Like you don't eat a peanut butter sandwich if you've got a peanut allergy. So it's like don't watch Fantasia 2000 if you're prone to go into a epileptic, epileptic shock. So
I wonder if when I went in, if there was
Polybius, that's the name of it.
Yeah, because IMAX, I think, was still, kind of disorienting in 2000. So I wonder if there was like a warning or something going in. I don't remember.
There should have been, but okay. So the story in my mind starts in the very second animation, and I forgot what the name. It was like Pines of something.
Pines of Rome, Respighi, which is one of those things where you would go in and they would give you a program telling you what everything sounds like or what everything's supposed to be.
So they lied to us right off the bat. They're like, this is the kind of music that doesn't have a story. Okay, now here's some music that is based on a story.
Let me check. It's a tone poem, so at least it's supposed to suggest a story. I'll see if it actually has a program. 4 movements. I don't think we get all 4. The Pines. It's okay. They're just different places. You're supposed to imagine like different places as you listen to that. So each movement's a different forest that it's supposed to evoke. So
right. So it's not music for the sake of tonality alone, which is what they introduced the entire movie of Fantasia 2000 as in the intro. So they're lying to you off the bat.
Oh, I think the original one. Do they have any narration? I feel like the idea is to progress through the different kinds of music. I don't know. I mean, they didn't do a very good job in any case, but I think it's supposed to get more narrative as we go. Steve Martin's the one that introduces this one, and it's just the worst version of Steve Martin you can imagine, like worse than The Jerk. Yeah, it is the worst. And he just come off.
And I don't think Jerk's a bad movie. I mean, like the actual Jerk, worse than him.
Oh, you did the person, The Jerk. Yeah. But anyway, so you're supposed to it's supposed to evoke different forests, and what do we see in this?
Well, we see
how many trees do we see?
No, we see it starts directly underwater, so this also seems like it looked really cool when it first came out, but watching it 20 years in the future and looking back, some of the 3D aspects and just the way that they kind of draw on top of this 3D whale model and how the light refracts and stuff, like it's interesting but really dated in a non-timeless way that makes it not as good as it could have been if they had just hand animated it, which I guess might not have been possible for what they wanted to do here. But this freaking baby whale is where the Disney proxy kicks off again, and I think in my mind this is almost taking the original Fantasia, which was that first spell, right? This is the spell of casting the Disney universe into the world and making it a reality, like manifesting it. And Fantasia 2000, it's kind of like at this point in time when Disney is maybe going to make it, maybe not going to make it. They've had some hits, they've had some misses, but it almost seems like the hits that they had, no one was planning on those, and the ones they thought were going to be the hits ended up not being that. And we've seen that through the research from this series, right? It's almost like they're throwing darts at a board, and all the ones that they think are like the bullseyes end up not doing as well as the ones that like missed it entirely. And then those are the ones that end up getting everything. So that's the environment heading into this movie, right? Disney is maybe going to make it, maybe not. So Fantasia 2000, just like the first Fantasia, it's like a recasting of the spell, but it's like for this new generation.
And it's a splinter of the company, the lineage, the Disney guy that's still alive, trying to. Oh, sorry, that's my heater coming on. It's a splinter faction of the Disney company trying to reclaim it. It's not like a full company effort, really. Again, this is Roy's folly.
And it does feel like there's like fighting going on in this movie because of how juxtaposed some of the stuff are. Like they don't all necessarily match up. It goes from 3D to mid-century modern, and I guess part of those interstitials, maybe it's like, man, that interstitial is so jarring. Maybe they won't realize that the animations themselves don't necessarily mesh as well as they could have. because we're just gonna stick Steve Martin in there with a bunch of like really bad jokes. Let's throw Bette Midler in there. Like then anyone will, as soon as you show an animation after that, they'll be like, oh, thank God, there's something else on the screen. So maybe that was a strategic thing.
Penn and Teller doing jokes that were written for them.
This is the okay. We'll get to the Penn and Teller one. So in this concept that Fantasia 2000 is a recasting of Disney and the Fantasia, they also add this Disney proxy here. But the Disney proxy is a little bit different. So the baby whale gets separated from the parents, and then the parents, in the context of like watching it in order, right? You see the baby get separated, then the parents go up into the sky. So it's like, okay, they're dead. There's the Disney proxy. Baby gets separated, parents die, and now this baby whale is stuck in this underground. But as the baby whale is stuck in an underground, it sees like a light coming from above. This is getting like really occulted, right? Like you're stuck in the darkness. You've been separated from your creators. Now you see this light that's drawing you towards it.
3 days in the pyramid.
It's very much this, but I also feel like this is that casting. This is the exact moment. It's like, okay, let's re-inject this whole Disney proxy because that didn't exist in the original Fantasia. There wasn't a Disney proxy because it wasn't really a cohesive story with like a character at any point. This one, there is a character, and specifically in this one, the second animation, and it's that little baby whale. So that represents the child, the person that's maybe the movie is made for. This is like the new generation growing up. And it's like, okay, get rid of the parents, throw them up into the sky. And then we're going to lead him on like Disney's the light. So this is the beginning of the spell that gets cast in Fantasia 2000 and why I think the baby whale story is so important and what ends up happening towards the end of it.
I'm still, when we did Toy Story, we kind of decided that is actually the spell that took. One interesting thing about Fantasia 2000 is I don't think it really worked. And I mean, it has those aspects for sure, but it didn't succeed with them. The original succeeded wildly. Toy Story succeeded pretty wildly. This one doesn't so much.
Well, commercially, right? But if you think about Fantasia 2000 as just like a really expensive spell that they had to cast, like maybe there was never even a need for this one to make money. It was just a way to like continue that original spell of Fantasia 1. So, it doesn't make sense in a capitalist commercialized world where everything you put out has to return profit of some kind. But I think that this could just really have been like the thing that no one wanted to spend the money on, but like maybe Roy knew like, no, this actually has to happen. Maybe Eisner knew this has to happen, even though it's crappy. Like it has to exist just to perpetuate that spell, which means that there might be another Fantasia in the works at some point.
Yeah, sure. It'll be interesting to see who shows up with that one. But
I mean, an AI Disney Fantasia would be wild, man. If they had a model trained on all the classic Disney movies, and then they just fed in like prompts that was just generating Disney characters and morphing between them. I mean, they could even train it on the music. I hope I'm alive when they do it.
Are you describing our background? I think that's kind of what
we are for hire. If Disney wants to hire any consultants, I'll go back into the belly of the beast, but I have to work remote. I don't want to drive into the park anymore.
Oh yeah, the park. Oh, I guess you don't have to pay for parking if you work there, but yeah, I mean,
we got to pay in like the 4-hour drive in.
Yeah,
and that's if you live close. I mean, 4 hours is just going through the traffic and people that are going to Disney World.
I guess I'll be happy I take a train to work.
and then I wanted to note too in this whales sequence that I feel that they're kind of describing these whales that go into like the sky, but then you realize, which is really clever, and this is the part that I really like, is that they're showing you that the water is liquid and the whales can swim through liquid, but then the whales like swim out of the water and into the air. And this is where it looks like maybe the parents are dying, but really what's happening is that they've realized they can swim through any liquid, and air is a liquid. So they swim through that. And then they swim to the top of the air. I guess they get to the top of the atmosphere, and then they kind of like swim out into outer space. And then I'm just thinking like, okay, we've got whales in space. They're sentient. They've got some kind of advanced knowledge and they can traverse through dimensions. This is freaking the water planet Nibiru. This is Planet X, because one of the coolest theories I think on Planet X is that it's populated entirely by like whales and dolphins. And that I don't know if you're familiar with Planet X.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so the
I made an album once called Conflagration of Nibiru. The Firebird.
Okay, so I've got a captive audience in that right now. For anyone that doesn't know what Nibiru and Planet X are, a gross oversimplification, but there is a proposed planet that could be on an incredibly tight, like oval shape, so that it only comes into our orbit, like around Earth, once every X number of thousands and thousands of years of something. It might even be more than that. And then as soon as it passes by us, it goes way back out on its huge orbit, and we don't see it again forever. And one of the theories, the conspiracy theories, is that when it gets close to Earth, the beings on this water planet can like telepathically communicate is one aspect of it. Another one is they can actually jump from their planet onto ours, and vice versa. People on Earth can jump onto Planet X. It's almost like this train that comes around every once in a very long time. But one of the other concepts is that this is where dolphins come from, and this is maybe even where like whales come from, is that once Planet X got close enough to Earth, they were able to like jump through the atmosphere and into space and then jump into our planet. And that this is why dolphins have this like incredibly different type of intellect that almost competes with humans on some levels. It's all because they are like these aliens that came from a literal planet made out of water, and they're sort of like visitors, or the ones that we've got on our planet were like the tourists that ended up staying, like overstaying their visas or something. I don't know. But this particular animation that's got the Disney proxy, it's got this like occult symbolism of losing your creator and following the light to get back to the creator. And it's got this water planet Nibiru element to it. So, I mean, we're only 2 animations in, and I feel like we're justifying the occult Disney aspect of this already.
Just one note, scientifically also, by the way, I mean, Planet X sort of has to, or something has to exist because of orbit irregularities, especially in the outer planets. So there's also the black sun concept that, we actually are a binary star, but you can't see the other one. So that's another one that's kind of in there. And there's also plenty of occult theories on that one as well. So
and in the last episode we did Hollow Earth, which was Tarzan. So I mean, Disney's covering all the bases here. Like, this is maybe the first water planet Disney movie that I think we've seen.
We'll see how the Treasure Planet works out, which I've never seen. It will be my first viewing when we get to that one. I'm kind of excited to see that one. Something coloring me when I first saw this movie, I've never been able to get out of my head, is just as a Douglas Adams fan, I've read, watched, played video games of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So I just assumed these were the dolphins leaving Earth before it was demolished. I think that's what I thought, when I first watched it. So I was like, yeah, of course they're leaving. And they're about a galactic superhighway through here with the Vogon. Yeah, it's Vogon poetry that's lethal.
Oh, they are whales in this one.
They're dolphins in there, aren't they? Okay, good point. And I just, before I move on, I just have to read my note at the end here. I wonder how many whales got killed by lightning on the way to Alpha Centauri, since I was thinking about that, even if they're whales.
The payoff of this particular whale animation is pretty awesome. Like, out of all the criticism of the dated looking 3D renderings and some of the weird mismatched, like hand drawn facial expressions on top of the 3D stuff, all that goes out the window once the freaking whales start flying through space. Like, how can you not fall in love with like these cosmic whales and dancing, and then it's like a huge army of them? Like, it was just a freaking cool eye candy.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be something here. I guess we should go to the next one, though, because that is where Eisner kind of gave an edict and did have his influence on Fantasia 2000, which was do the Gershwin part, which I don't know. Is this the one that fits the least as well?
I don't know. I mean, this is the Rhapsody in Blue, right?
That's correct.
So it doesn't fit great because, again, it's not timeless. every other Fantasia animation up until this one right now kind of exists in an unknown time period. I mean, granted, the original where they show dinosaurs, maybe you could pinpoint, like an accepted time period, but this one, it's like very specifically, I don't know, 70s, 80s, like New York City almost. And it just feels too much like Oliver and Company. Like they just took Oliver and Company premise and they animated it, and they were like, now throw a black guy in there, and then we've got this animation. I don't know. It just lost some of that abstract quality that makes Fantasia so much. I don't know, like a ubiquitous, timeless thing.
And it feels like we're seriously trying to save money on animation for 14 minutes.
I didn't hate it. I actually didn't hate this style of animation, and I felt that this was a good example of them using new toys, like new technology, and not going over the top with it. Kind of like they did in the butterfly sequence and some of the whale stuff before. Like this one, they were smart about it. Although, yeah, it's much less majestic. It does not really awe-inspiring. It's almost like just watching an episode of Mr. Magoo, to be honest.
Yeah, it's I don't remember IF. Anyway, there's the around 1950, I think we talked about before, where there was this cheaper form of animation, and this just kind of smells like that. And you're like, don't put the cheaper form of animation in Fantasia. What are you doing?
Oh, this one does get a little bit of extra points for me because they show what I think inspired Bonsai Kittens, which also came around the time that I think Fantasia was coming out. Maybe Bonsai Kittens predated by a couple years. Do you know what Bonsai Kittens are?
I don't.
So you know what a bonsai tree is?
Oh yeah.
So a bonsai kitten, it was a internet hoax. It was like an internet prank, and I want to say like 97, 98 maybe. So a couple years before this came out. So they would have known about it. Whoever did this Rhapsody in Blue probably had heard about bonsai kittens. Maybe I'm reading into that. But the whole hoax was that if you bought a kitten, or if you had, were raising kittens, and you stuck one inside of like a small glass bottle or a glass jar, and you kept it in there, and you didn't let it leave, and you fed it, and you put water into this jar, that eventually the cat would just grow into the shape of the jar. And what was really happening is that someone just had a cat that liked to like get, cats, like they'll jump into like a fishbowl, or they'll jump into like boxes or weird shapes and just kind of fill the space, and they'll get back out of it like willingly. Well, someone was waiting for their cat to like get into these weird vases and weird like pots and stuff, and then take pictures of it, and then stick like a straw in there, and then just tell people like, yeah, my cat lives in here. Like I don't let my cat out of this vase. Like it just lives in this vase, and it's going to turn into like a half moon shaped cat if I do this long enough. And it attracted so many people filing complaints. They were like contacting animal rights rescues and stuff to come after these bonsai kitten guys, not realizing that it was a hoax the whole time.
Yeah, but I guess a few kittens got smushed into things badly.
No, I thought it was a nice little nod, and I'm sure it's not actually related to the two, but man, it was right in the exact same time period when this was a thing. And that's kind of like one of the only visuals that they introduced in this Rhapsody in Blue that isn't just kind of architectural looking, like just shapes moving around on the screen.
Also in this one, I will point out that I had, being the guy sitting here just pointing at it and calling it cheap, I did like that final Times Square shot. That was pretty cool.
I honestly didn't hate this one, but it does have that same feel of like, what are you doing? Don't put this in the Fantasia. And there was one element to this Rhapsody in Blue one that kind of made me think of like, okay, now they're just showing their stupid toys off again and not thinking about how good this looks. And I know this is like super nitpicky and very technical, but there's a scene at the very end of this Rhapsody in Blue animation where the protagonist, the black guy, is like next to someone with a beard. And when the guy's moving around, he's got like these hash marks that are sort of like the shading for his beard. But as he moves, the hash marks don't move with the beard. They act as like a mat that's in front of the beard. So as he moves, the hash marks kind of like stay static, even though his beards move. Anyways, that it was completely jarring, and it took me out of it in a bad way. Like you don't want someone to stop and think about the technical process that was used to make an animation while you're watching the animation. Granted, I might be a special case because I worked in Disney animation for 10 years, but I don't know, that's the way that it stood out to me was just like, oh, well, now I'm no longer in the magic. Like you ruined the magic for me. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, but that is where when we came out of the theater, we were like, they spent 25% of the movie on this, which seemed kind of
money wise.
No. They time wise,
time wise,
15 minutes. Okay, that 1/5, I guess, is more accurate, but 20%. But that's a lot of the movie for just this. When you're kind of coming in to get dazzled by, I mean, the butterflies dazzled you in 2000.
Dazzled?
Yeah, you're not satisfied. Then Bette Midler shows us the undone concepts, including the Dali.
I wanted to know, in the Rhapsody in Blue, this guy is clearly, in my opinion, he seems like he's working in downtown New York. He hates his job. All he can think about is playing music after, like, his moonlighting job, right? My first thought was like, is this dude helping build the Twin Towers? Is this maybe why they fell? Because this dude was like too preoccupied with music and not because he wasn't doing a good job as a construction worker. Can we at least agree on that?
Yeah, of course. Well, he has to be a doofus for it to work, doesn't he?
I guess so. I mean, yeah, it's Mr. Magoo style, so we kind of needed this like Mr. Magoo look to it, but he might have caused a tragedy in 2001, so.
Yeah. You misbuild it, comes back and bites you in the butt a few decades later. Did you want to move on from that one?
Bette Midler, yeah, you take over. That
I was actually going to suggest. She shows several undone concepts, and one of which is the Dali. So maybe this is where we talk about Destino, since that's where they show it a bit. Or do you want to save Destino?
Let's say that for the end, because I think that'll be a good payoff. But she also shows artwork from I think it's like a Danish illustrator named K. Nielsen, and he was supposed to do like the Ride of the Valkyries. And man, I just gotta say that the couple of like concept arts that she shows is so much cooler than anything that's actually in the movie. Like, it's lit. Like, as she's showing this, all I'm hearing her say is like, hey, here's some cool shit you'll never see. Okay, back to our movie. You know what I mean?
Now we're gonna show you a tin soldier. Tin Soldiers next. That's the Shostakovich, which I love Shostakovich's symphonies. This one wasn't really rating a hit in my brain spots for whatever reason. But here's how you stick a piano in an orchestra, I guess. This one, now I'm wondering if I did like this coming out, because I remember us coming out of it being like, and then they spent like several minutes on just like really CGI stuff, which was the Tin Soldier segment.
Yeah, the Tin Soldier one, I actually like the very beginning of it because it starts out looking traditional and then it immediately jumps into like a 3D look, which I didn't like. And it's hard to imagine what I might have thought if I saw it when it first came out, but I'm not. I'm seeing it now. And I think it was maybe a misstep to have relied so much on all this cool 3D stuff. And before we even segment into this Tin Soldier, before she goes into it, I just want to point out Bette Midler refers to Salvador Dali as the limp watch guy. And I was just like, screw you, Bette Midler. Like, even if this is like a funny, like tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, I'm so ignorant, it was just like, get off the screen. Come on, seriously. Like, they could have just shown a picture of Salvador Dali and no words, and it would have improved the movie more than Bette. I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm just a Bette Midler hater. I don't think I am, but her and Steve Martin like ruined the little interstitials in this movie for me.
Well, and so did some other people. Yeah, well, Steve Martin's the biggest bummer because it's like, man, I like a lot of Steve Martin stuff. It
could have been good. And yeah, I guess other people too, because after the Steadfast Tin Soldier, that's when you see Penn and Teller. And it's like, I don't hate Penn and Teller entirely, but what the hell are they doing in Fantasia 2000? Like, are they about to do like some stupid boomer joke? And they kind of do a little bit.
They are.
Yeah.
So I find the Tin Soldier one, I did find the last minute or two of it really kind of make me think, oh, this is probably what the Little Mermaid would have looked like if they had done it 10 years later. So
Thank God they didn't.
Yeah. But I was just like, oh, this seems like what late 90s mermaid would have looked like. So I thought that was a little bit interesting, just from a a thought experiment frame of mind. But yeah, that's literally all the notes I really wrote about that one.
I can't believe that they showed us they showed us the Salvador Dali and they showed us the K. Nielsen Valkyries. And then they were like, we didn't do those. We did this. Here it is. And the whole time I'm just like, man, like either of those would have been 20 times cooler than this.
Let's see. James Earl Jones shows up first. So that's kind of fun.
Even he doesn't save it though.
He doesn't save it. It's just like, it's nice to hear his voice. We get the flamingo dance, I guess, at Carnival of the Animals. It's like what, a minute and a half. I mean, it's kind of a squib. How do you feel about the flamingos?
I mean, I've seen enough of them. I'm in Florida. They're not as novel as
they don't do yo-yos.
Yeah, it didn't move the needle for me.
Yeah, again, it's pretty forgettable. The only time I remember this is here is when I'm watching it or when I have written notes and I'm talking about it as I am now.
I'm trying to see. I don't even think I took any notes on the flamingos. I did want to ask you a little tangential, but when we see Penn and Teller, have you ever seen Penn and Teller's TV show called Bullshit?
I mean, I know of it. I have never been that well versed in anything Penn and Teller, to be perfectly honest. So
I got it for anyone that's seen it or hasn't seen it. This is the only opportunity that it's ever presented itself for me to even make a comment on this very outdated TV series that's no longer relevant by boomer comedians. But the Penn and Teller series called Bullshit was on HBO, I think, for like 2 seasons, and each episode, I think it was split between two. It was 2 different topics, and they would just explain why that topic was BS. And one of those episodes, they have one just called Conspiracy, or like Conspiracy Theory. And they prove how just conspiracies, period, full stop, are all BS. And the way that they disprove it is that they put an ad for the paper for like a security guard in like on Craigslist or something. And they have 3 people show up, they hire them, and they say, okay, you're going to go into this room and you have to watch these 2 cameras and just let us know if anything out of the ordinary happens, right? They're not hiring ex-military or ex-police or anyone that's qualified to do security. They're literally just putting it on Craigslist and hiring the people that seem like they're going to do the worst job. But anyways, so they hire these 3 different people to watch these security cameras. And then in one of the cameras, they have like a wife come out and like start undressing, or basically the whole distraction aspect of magic. Like, oh, here's like a big explosion, or here's a really attractive assistant, and then they do like the trick off here on the side when you don't see it. But the whole premise of this particular episode was that conspiracies can exist because they require too much coordination, and that humans are too unreliable to be coordinated and to even do conspiracies. It was almost just like they were saying, like, no, humans are just, cavemen with a little bit of extra knowledge. So conspiracies don't exist. And then they show that these 3 people were so distracted by these like very contrived performances that were happening on some of the cameras that they were able to like have thieves come in and like steal something out of the house on the other camera. And then it was like, see, and that's why 9/11 couldn't have been an inside job. Okay, now on to the next episode. And I will never let this one die. This always was like, Penn and Teller, you're dead to me from now on because of this one episode where you literally tried to say 9/11 official story made sense because you hired 3 people off of Craigslist and they got distracted at 2 a.m. watching someone undress on like a baby monitor camera. So
also, I assume 80% of conspiracies are the result of people being stupid, not smart.
And I would argue that it's the end result that matters and not the original intent. So like I guess in a bastardization of, I think, like Gray's Law or something, but one of the ones that's been restated is that sufficient malice is indistinguishable from incompetence, or like any sufficiently advanced incompetence is indistinguishable from malice, which is kind of like any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, which I think is one of Clark's laws.
Oh yes, for sure. I actually was just thinking, my buddy Mark yesterday kind of told me a JFK theory I had not heard. Maybe you have. I like this one because it's just based on stupidity. The theory being that the Secret Service guys were like kind of partying the night before and not like at their best. We're going to put Oswald in the depository shooting off one shot in this version of the theory. Just one shot, at which point the secret security guys, like, they flip out, but they're also a little hungover. And one guy accidentally blasts a few rounds from his assault rifle. I'm like, or whatever they have at the time. So I was like,
this is actually a fairly popular one. That
I just heard that one. I was new to this. I don't know if that's one I would buy, but I like that one because it's based on stupidity.
This is he was shot accidentally by the Secret Service.
Yes.
The other more esoteric ones that not a lot of people have heard of. One is that Jackie shot him. That she was sitting next to him and she did everything.
I have heard that one weirdly.
And one of my favorites is that JFK reached total enlightenment in that moment and his brain just couldn't exist in the physical plane anymore. So nobody shot him. He reached enlightenment and went to nirvana, essentially.
What, he didn't reach enlightenment with Marilyn Monroe? Okay. Yeah, that one's fun. I like that one. Okay, that one is new to me. So there's always a new one for that.
There's lots, man. There's actually an endless number. I was trying to make a full index of every JFK assassination theory. There's too many. There's way too many. There's one there. This is probably one of my favorites. I'm still trying to figure out like exactly what it means because it sounds interesting, but when I try and find like who made the claim and what it actually means, it gets a little bit dicey. But that there were like 8 gunmen and that they all shot JFK at the same time on that day, and it's like the aliens, yes, that's true, and it was the Jesuits, and it was the Freemasons, and it was the CIA and the FBI and the DEA and the IRS and just everyone was there, and they all shot him. Like it's called the like multiple or every multiple shooter theory. It gets fun, but it's very exhausting.
Well, yeah, it depends how ceremonial you want to get with it, right? You can go 100% all the way to 100 if you feel like it, or maybe you can only go 99.9. There's always a good idea to add on. It's like you can't achieve the speed of light, they say. We've talked about Sorcerer's Apprentice. It looked grainy in IMAX. They could not upscale it well in 2000. I remember that.
So was this the exact same animation, or
unless they made a little change? But yes, theoretically it was exactly the same.
So I was trying to pay attention as closely as I could, and I couldn't tell if some of these things were introduced or if I just didn't notice them on the first one. But the biggest one is that the sorcerer, he actually has the butterflies at the very beginning of this animation, and they look just like the butterflies at the very beginning of Fantasia 2000, like the little abstract color things. And I couldn't remember, and I didn't go back and watch the first one to know, but I was wondering if that was added just as like a callback for this movie.
Now you have me thinking about it. Let's see. Leopold Stokowski. They changed the voice of Stokowski. Introduced by Penn and Teller, and I can't find any specific evidence, but I'll keep looking a little bit and see if there is a change. But
and I guess since we already have, let's assume that it's the same animation, just a restatement of something that I think is really important occult wise to mention here, and that's that they're showing like the folly of what most people look at magic as. So as an example, Disney and so many cartoons seem to do this, and I love this trope, and we mention it all the time, but the first time someone discovers magic is real, they use it to like clean their room. And there's so many Disney movies now that have done this, and it's just like, is there not something more interesting you could be doing with magic than sweeping the floor and cleaning the dishes? And I think it speaks to this ignorance of like a true apprentice, like a real sorcerer's apprentice. They would want to use magic for the dumbest and most mundane of things. And what they actually show is that they're putting more effort into the magic of getting a broom to sweep up a room versus the effort to just grab the broom and use mundane, ways to like sweep the floor with your own body. And I think that there's actually like a real occult lesson in here, and it's almost that don't get caught up in using magic for the novelty. Like if you could just grab the broom and sweep the floor, like that's magic enough, right? It's magic enough that you've got this like meat space suit on and that you can look at this inanimate object and pick it up and like force it to do your, like, that is magic. It's just so common that it feels not magic. So then what happens is if you find like this real quote unquote magic that is like fascinating you, the first thing that people think to do is like go back and do the boring thing that they already know how to do, instead of applying it to do something that they haven't already been able to do. I don't know. It's like Roombas, right? Like, oh God, we're going to have robots in our houses. Imagine like this future. Oh, you've got a robot in your house now. What does it do? You're like, oh yeah, it just cleans up dog poop. That's all.
Also, I don't use it. I just use the vacuum cleaner.
Right.
Which is true in this house. We have a Roomba, but I don't know. Earlier, I turned the mute on a bit because I heard my wife was vacuuming, so it wasn't Roomba. It makes me think of people will literally stand outside of a Starbucks, get on the app, go through everything to order the coffee through the app. Right? It's like just go into Starbucks. I don't know the way. That's my example. I haven't been inside a Starbucks since 2008. I guess it's just shorthand.
It's a good point though, and I think that's the same thing has happened with technology. I mean, the AI argument, I don't know if I fall on one of the sides of this, but the argument that's made that sounds good as a headline, like the surface level, but it's like so many people expected AI to like take over all of the bad parts of work, all of the manual labor, all of the really boring aspects, so that we'd have more time to work on like artwork and music. But instead, it's like some of the first big changes are that AI is doing art and music. And now it's like, oh, great, now I have more time to do the manual labor tasks that AI isn't up to yet. It's a flawed argument, but I think there's an interesting element to that correlates with this exact same source as Apprentice, where it's like you find this magical ability, this new supernatural device, and the first thing you use it for is to do things that you already know how to do, instead of using it to create things that you didn't. I don't know. I think it's an interesting analogy between that.
Well, actually, I'm going with some of my coworkers to Disney Sea in a few weeks. It's my first time in one of the parks for 10 plus years. So they got the tickets ahead. I'm like, well, you used to just go to the front and buy them, but yeah, okay, great. And then it's like Fast Pass. Oh, you got to do it all through apps now. It's like, why can't I just physically go to the ride and get a Fast Pass? That makes sense.
Nope.
I mean, I
can walk to, like, book it in advance and like,
yeah. But
it's a whole thing.
I'll get back to you about my sea experience. I'll keep an eye out for a weird sea lore. I think I brought that up to Society of Explorers Adventures before. That's where it's from. So keep an eye out for that.
Look for the Fantasia whales.
Yes. I was going to bring up a Twilight Zone I recently covered just for how you use magic when you find it, which is a piano in the house where a guy ends up with he gets a player piano for his wife because he's like, well, now you don't have to learn. You can just let the player piano play. It also turns out the magic part is when the music you put in like will influence people and get them to say like, it's like a truth serum, basically, like an emotional truth serum. So what does he do with his new magic? He has a party and then continues to tear apart all of his family and friends. Of course, it's a Twilight Zone and ends up getting turned on him in the end. But I was like, there's a very different use of magic when you come upon it. Or a different way to go about it. That's a good
example too, like of like the player pianos, where it's like, I don't know if anyone necessarily needed to get rid of the person playing the instrument, so the instrument played itself, but
he's like, I know you'll get frustrated trying to learn piano, so I've cut that part out for you. Like he's very condescending about it to his wife. So Barry Morris, fantastic actor, also in Space 1999, which I also cover. Let's I guess we'll go on to the next bit, which is the Donald Noah segment, which is
pomp and circumstance, right?
A little too not abstract, a little too cutesy to be a proper Fantasia, I guess. Again, seeing that animation on an IMAX in 2000 when you're not that familiar with an IMAX was spectacular. But yeah, watching it last night, it's like a Donald Duck a Donald Duck cartoon they would show at the was it the Holy Land experience? You know,
Which no longer exists, by the way. I drove by it recently, and it's wiped out completely. Like for a couple years ago, they started breaking it down and selling off chunks of it, so you could actually go to like public auctions and own parts of the Holy Land experience. But now it's just leveled, and they're probably going to turn it into like a car dealership.
Yeah. I think I knew it closed for the pandemic and never reopened. So, but that just what was the other one? Is Noah's Ark in the Midwest still open? They show it there.
I believe so. Yeah, the one where they have the museum that tells you the dinosaurs aren't real. I would love to go there one day, but I don't know if there's anything else around there making it worth the trip. Like that's the thing you do as a joke when you're actually going there to do something else. But
here it seems they're kind of reusing some stills from, or some production stuff from The Lion King. A lot of it has kind of a Lion King-y vibe with all the animals coming in. I do like that Donald's just get naked and drunk, just like Noah did. Of course, he did it before the trip. I think Noah does it after they land. But yeah, little land. Yeah, it works. A little different there. I've always been annoyed by pomp and circumstance. Well, the famous part. It's one of those things. Where, it's just it's
you know what, for someone that dislikes academia as much as I do, I really like the song that they use for graduation ceremonies. I don't know what it is, man. It's just I don't know. I like this song, even though I've heard it a million times.
Pomp and circumstance marches. I think part of the reason is since it makes me think of graduations, it makes me think of being in a place that's too hot wearing a starchy suit as a child. Okay. I think that might be part of it.
When it comes on, it's got like an NLP anchor baked into your head.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about it. I like it when you use I guess they don't use that in Animal House, but yeah, it's the Brahms thing or whatever. But yeah, if you use it ironically, I probably like it. So
well, I think, I mean, overall, pomp and circumstance is ironically used in academia itself. Maybe I'm just missing the reference, but pomp and circumstance was a reference to Shakespeare's Othello, and there's a line where they say pride, pomp, and circumstance of glorious war. So pomp and circumstance is actually talking about like the glorification of war, yet they use it for things that otherwise seem like, you know, pacifist sort of things like graduating from school. But it kind of was like a war call of some kind. Unless, I don't know if I'm misinterpreting that.
Well, that could be right. Elgar, you know, British Empire sort of stuff. It's one of there's not a ton of English composers who write classical music. A lot of it is the Germans and the Austrians and the French and the Russians.
True. Yeah. Sir Edward Elgar.
Yeah, he's one of the few Brits coming at you. Actually, you're making me think of another Twilight Zone I covered in which the old teacher is being forcibly retired and he's despondent and about to kill himself. He goes to the school and the ghosts of his students come and talk about how much their poetry actually inspired them and how in World War I and World War II, when they were in the line of fire and getting killed, they were thinking of heroic poetry, and it's supposed to be like an inspiring episode. And I'm sitting there like, this is kind of horrible. Like he taught all of his kids to die with a sense of, I mean, they're still going into the meat grinder and thinking of heroic poetry as they die. I guess that's better than just pissing your pants. I don't know. Anyway, it was like, oh, he's inspired all these kids who died in war. Great.
It's like a Dead Poet Society.
Yeah. Well, that's one kid in there, isn't it? But yeah, it was kind of a Dead Poet Society thing, except it was Donald Pleasance, who was Ernest Blofeld and Dr. Sam Loomis in Halloween. So interesting casting there. What else did I write about Donald getting naked and drunk? I like that. Oh, yeah, there's no humans here. That's interesting because Donald and Daisy take the place of the humans. And I'm like, well, I guess this is how we get to Zootopia. I don't know.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like, are there ducks on the boat? Kind of like this the Goofy saved Pluto in the same way that Donald and Daisy saved a non anthropomorphic duck. Are there non-anthropomorphic ducks in Disney cartoons? I assume
No,
that
they're
are.
on the list. Remember when they get to the ducks on the list, it's a picture of Donald and Daisy. So they are the ducks.
They are the things that they are supposed to be saving. There's something very meta about
They're
that.
saving themselves. I mean, Noah was saving himself, although he took like what, 6 people? I don't remember what the exact number was.
Oh, he left a lot more than he took.
He left a lot more than he took. I was, of course, sitting there thinking of the Aronofsky Noah movie. Have you seen that?
I have. I love it. A lot of people don't love it. I think I've liked every Aronofsky movie except for The Fountain, and maybe I just need to watch The Fountain like 10 more times before I can appreciate
give
it.
At least one more view. I think I like it less than I used to, but I still like The Fountain.
I'll try. I haven't watched it yet where I liked it, but man, every time I watch Pi, I love Pi. Every time I watch, what was the one where Jared Leto, like his arm explodes?
Oh yeah, Requiem for a Dream.
Requiem for a Dream.
We just covered that on my other podcast. I
shower every time after I watch that movie. Like I just feel dirty. You know what I mean?
Our guest for that said, I honestly didn't know if this was on the good movies list or the bad movies list.
Oh, it's a phenomenal movie.
It's on the good movies list.
It is. Holy cow! What a powerful, like that. Yeah, but let's just turn this into a Darren Aronofsky episode for the rest of this. But man, like Aronofsky movies for me, like they stick with me. Like I don't forget the things that except for The Fountain. Screw The Fountain. It was like boring as hell. But every other one, like I can't see a stock movie. I can't watch Boiler Room and not think about Darren Aronofsky's Pi. You know, I can't watch someone play Othello again. Here's a sync back to Pomp and Circumstance, right? Came from Othello, but I can't watch someone play a game of like Othello or Go without thinking of Aronofsky and Pi. And just like now, I can't even hear the word Nephilim or Watcher without thinking of the Noah movie that you just brought up.
Yeah. Have you? I just watched Blade Runner in 2049, which also gives you a very strange Jared Leto. Well, I mean, you usually get a strange Jared Leto, but there's another one for you that I
haven't seen that yet, and I didn't even know Jared Leto was in the new Blade Runner.
He's not. He's in it for about 2 or 3 minutes of screen time in the end. I think,
that's the best role for Jared Leto.
It is, and he makes his mark very well in that way. It's weird. Like around 2000, he was. People are like, "Oh, is he going to be one of our leading men?" And he turned out to be
he turned out to be Jared Leto. Out, but
well, he turned out to be Jared Leto. So that's I guess you know,
he's kind of like a Keith Raniere in a way. Like he's the acting world's version of Keith Raniere.
So yeah, it's like, yeah, I honestly would want to talk about more about Aronofsky's Noah than too much of the segment. Unless you got something else. I mean, it looks good. It's got Lion King animation. It's some, I mean, everyone knows the story, I guess, but it is weird to get this religious in the middle of Fantasia too.
I don't know. I kind of appreciate it. I think that's just your horrible Japanese atheistic, like the same thing that's going to send you to burn in hell for eternity is the same thing that's not letting you appreciate this particular Donald Duck animation. But
damn Fire and Brimstone.
Damn Fire and Brimstone. But I do think that if I had to list my favorite Donald Duck cartoons ever created, this is number 2. Number 1 is probably the Sacred Geometry one.
Space. Oh, that one's good too. Okay.
How could it not be? Oh, so which one am I missing?
Der Führer's Face. That has
maybe a 3, maybe a tight 3 for novelty,
okay.
But
it's got the song that won't get out of your head.
The Noah's Ark one from Fantasia 2000 though is probably one of the most like grandiose Donald Duck cartoons I've ever seen. Like I don't know if there's been another Donald Duck cartoon that had this amount of animation budget associated with it. So for that reason alone, I kind of love Donald Duck. So yeah, I feel like it's high up there just because I don't think he's ever gotten this kind of a treatment before or after this.
I guess that's one of the things with Fantasia 2000. If you took this out and just presented it to me as a 6-8 minute clip, I'd be like, that's amazing. If you took out the Pines of Rome and just showed it to me as a clip, I'd be like, okay, the whales look a little wonky, but it's pretty cool. Like these would work. A lot of these would work pretty well in isolation, but they just, with the celebrity cameos, and it's just like kind of a muddled mess is one of the big problems here.
Well, I mean, the way that they describe what Fantasia was supposed to be at the beginning of this movie, just sit back for a second and imagine a world where this actually exists. And I feel like this makes more sense. So there's like a Fantasia website just to make it easy to visualize. Fantasia.com. Another version might be like a traveling physical version, but let's just say you go to Fantasia.com and you hit play, and all it does is just randomly plays one of these little isolated clips, one to another, to another, to another, no people in between, not even necessarily like a thread where the one that you just saw has to tie into or even transition nicely into the next one. It's just like, here's a completely no spoken word animation with classical music. Here's another, just forever and ever. I feel like that is what Fantasia was supposed to be. So the fact that they're trying to weave it into like a cohesive thing with these interstitial segments is killing it. Like if they would just let it be a random playlist, it would almost be better. And like all of a sudden now the Rhapsody in Blue followed by Noah's Ark and Donald and the Curse of Ham, like those two things might actually make sense next to each other, but because they're trying to dress it up and tell you what it is, it doesn't work.
Yeah, so if it was just like Donald Duck, Noah, you'd be like, that's weird, and then you'd see it and be like, that's grandiose and it's cool. But here, it's kind of funny. So yeah, shall we do the Firebird?
Well, yeah. So this by far was the best animation of the entire movie, Fantasia 2000, and it doesn't start out as like the Firebird necessarily. It starts as Gaia, like this Mother Earth spirit trying to get to the top of some mountain or whatever. And man, like I wish that this little segment was a full-blown feature animation Disney movie. It would have been cooler than so many of the other ones that we've seen so far. I love it. Like the occult references and the whole, like she represents paganism and paganism like dying and she wants to spread it, but she can't, and the mountain won't grow anything else. And I really do feel like this last one, especially following the Noah's Ark, it's almost like in reverse. It's like, okay, here's this monotheistic version of Donald Duck, and now here's paganism trying to like claw its way back up the top of this mountain and trying to win, but it can't because Christianity's here. But at the end of this one, they do win. Like the Gaia is able to grow all over the mountain, and then the freaking Phoenix shows up and they do this whole rebirth. And I'm just thinking like, this is what ties the whole entire Disney proxy and the recasting of Fantasia 2000 magic spell, is they're showing you that, convention won, Christianity won at some point. Here's Donald Duck to show you that our pop culture and our intellectual property combining with like the oldest, these Old Testament stories. But then it's like, but paganism is still in the background. Paganism still has its roots and it's still able to keep spreading. And in fact, Disney and Fantasia 2000 is going to make sure it keeps spreading. So here's this rebirth of paganism in this world where it seems that, Noah's Ark prevails. I don't know. That was the message that I was kind of getting, and why they put this one last and why they show it directly after Noah's Ark and all of this. Like, there's no way that I can see a personified Gaia as not representing like ancient pagan worship.
Here's what I find weird. The Firebird has an extremely it's a ballet, right? So it's got a story. I mean, it has some abstractions, but it's a distinct story. The music's made for distinct things happening on a distinct stage. It's nothing really about, I mean, it's paganism, but what you just described with Gaia and death and rebirth, that actually is the rite of spring, which they already used in the original Fantasia for dinosaurs.
Right, which I think adds more credit to how Fantasia 2000 is a literal recasting of the same spell, just like slightly updated to include the proxy and a few of the other things that they've developed over the years. And to note this whole Phoenix scene, it represents the rebirth of Disney because they needed this boost. It represents clearing out the old and refreshing it with the new, not just in technology, but like the old men are now gone, right? Roy is kind of like on his way out in favor of like the new board approach of everything. So this is like cycling everything out, using the same magic, but just replacing the wizards that are inside the castle. And it happens in the year 2000, which kind of again gives credit that this is like an actual spell being cast at a particular time, and that whole concept of Gaia trying to climb the mountain and like dying. Like this is Disney trying to like keep climbing mountains, keep trying to like elevate more and more, that capitalist of like always be growing, and showing that they're struggling in order to do it. And the only way they can do it is they cast this magic spell. And at the freaking end, they show all these redwood trees like sprouting up. And I'm just like, this is Bohemian Grove. Like all of this just happened at Bohemian Grove.
Here's the actual Firebird stuff, and yeah, I was kind of feeling like I think we do need to connect this to Rite of Spring, but the very short version of the story of the Firebird originally is set in the evil immortal Koschei's castle. The ballet follows Prince Ivan, who battles Koschei with the help of the magical Firebird. Apparently, it's somewhat based on a poem that includes a winter's journey by Yakov Polonsky. Sorry, I'm not thinking about my Russian there. It's in my dreams, I see myself on a wolf's back riding along a forest path to do battle with the sorcerer Tsar in that land where a princess sits under lock and key, pining behind massive walls. Their garden surrounds a palace all of glass. Their firebirds sing by night and peck at golden fruit. So that is at least where the music was theoretically coming from. Which I guess there's a few things that you could tie in with this animation from what I just read. So, maybe they took that and just abstracted it a bit too.
Well, this by far was the best animation, in my opinion, of this entire movie. So like they definitely saved the best for last. And it's like a really big payoff, in my opinion.
That's probably why I came out of the theater thinking, hey, that was pretty good. And why in my mind, I keep going back and Fantasia 2000 is pretty good. It's got that, that last segment has some
right. And
some
I guess that I'm thinking that when I accidentally watched 2000 instead of the first one, like I only got maybe the first two or maybe three in. So what does that mean? I got to see the over digitized butterflies. Then I got to see the over digitized whales. And then I saw the freaking Rhapsody in blue, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna put on the critic now, and I stopped it there. But if I had watched it, like the ones that come on after those three are much better than the previous ones, maybe excluding the Flamingo, I don't know. But yeah, like this final one and the Donald Duck one absolutely knocked my socks off.
I will note that the Firebird jump scare is one of my two favorite jump scares. The other one being when the face hugger comes out of the egg at John Hurt and Alien.
I don't know if this registered as a jump scare to me.
One, it's supposed to. There's different orchestrations, some that build up to the dun, 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 dun part, right? I like this version where it's just completely quiet and you can never anticipate quite where that burst is going to come unless you're in the orchestra reading the music and counting, so made me jump in IMAX, I'll tell you that, and I'd played it before.
So yeah, it's really good ending. So the ending of Fantasia 2000 is way better than the beginning for sure.
Yeah, and the Infernal Dance I think that is just one of my favorite pieces of music, full stop. And playing it, I guess this is interesting because of the violence on screen. Playing it in the orchestra is also extremely violent. It's one of the few times you're really like just physically pummeling a cello, at least. Because you just rip those notes out at weird intervals,
That's the cool. I mean, honestly, listening to orchestral music and like going to like a Philharmonic show, like being able to, and this is going to sound so woo-woo, and I hate sounding woo-woo, but this is like a legitimate instance where you can like feel the energy of what's happening on stage just through the sound. And it's like such a physical and like undeniable feeling of their energy that seems like it's magic. Like this is maybe going into that realm of like indescribable technology, or just not being able to pinpoint how your senses are working at like a very deep level, but it's working. Like you're physically feeling it happen, and you can see the energy like shifting around the room and stuff. I don't know, it's if you ever, I know you have, but if anyone's never seen like an actual live orchestral performance, it's worth just going for that alone. Even if you don't even care about the music or anything, just like feeling the music reverberate through the crowd is something very uncanny.
Here's something, and I wouldn't even call this that woo. You're also feeling the orchestra. People are moving, they're shuffling their seats. The vibrations, even on a subtle level, are reaching you, and that adds a visceral part to the music that's impossible on a recording. I know I've heard people talk about how pipe organs, again, made around the time of Bach and Vivaldi and stuff, like you can't really hear those unless you're just in the cathedral, with it reverberating off of those walls built in a certain way. You put it on a CD or on a piece of vinyl, it'll sound good, but it's not going to be the same experience.
You're not getting the full programming.
Right. I mentioned before and plugged on here, I do the binaural stuff. I'm like, well, this is brainwashing music, but hey, I'm brainwashing myself here. So at least I know if there's a conspiracy, it's that dark hidden person somewhere in my head that the Mr. Hyde.
Well, again, man, I believe more in outcomes than in intents, and I know that flips typical like magic convention where it's like it's all about the intent. I don't know if I agree on that. I think that if you're doing binaural beats, and even if you really want them to help people, that like everyone that listens to them like goes straight JD Salinger and just starts taking out politicians, or like they just go into like an incredibly manic depressive spiral until they unalive them. Like that would be, even if your intentions are great, like you're putting poison into the world, you're causing complete havoc. Just like if you were like, oh, I'm going to make, the first guy was like, I'm going to feed this guy stale bread. It's moldy. I hope he gets sick from it. And the guy eats it and he's like, damn, you just cured me. You know what I mean? That's how penicillin was found. It's like, it's still a net positive. So even though the intent was bad, the outcome was good. So I don't know. I always lean more towards the actual outcome versus the intent.
Or if you
it's impossible to even really prove somebody's intent. That's always going to be subjective.
Well, Oppenheimer just won the Oscar, and that's basically the conceit of that movie.
Right.
Well, good intention, bad result, I guess, in that case. Good intentions by a nut job, a very smart nut job, bad results.
Maybe. And actually, to segue into the freaking Penn and Teller trying to disprove conspiracy theories because no one can coordinate, the freaking Manhattan Project and Oppenheimer, that is pretty damning proof that you can orchestrate an incredibly all-encompassing conspiracy that involves thousands and thousands of people, but it's so compartmentalized that no one knows that like they're all in on the same thing or even what the hell they're working on. So yeah, Oppenheimer and Manhattan Project are perfect example of like there's no such thing as a conspiracy that's too big or too complicated because it would need too many people in on it.
I mean, Gotha Tonkin is now, that's not a conspiracy theory anymore. Isn't that just like what happened? Jim Morrison's dad doing a false flag. Isn't that like basically like, is that generally accepted now, or am I just, nutty?
Well, I think that you're definitely in a certain camp that's more accepting of that particular explanation of it, because even the official ones that admit that it was, that none of them say false flag. I'll say that first off. You say false flag, you're definitely showing a little bit of bias in a camp.
I'm using shorthand there.
Good bias, like you're in my camp, so like you're welcome, you're invited. But I think that some of the like towing the government official explanation is that it was an oopsie. It was like, whoops, we didn't mean to do that. Or, oh, it looks like this might have been a false flag event, but it might have just been a mishap that then got blown out of proportion, and then that blowing out of proportion was then used to exploit that it could have been a false flag. I don't know. It's the end result, not necessarily the intent, that I think matters more.
And the Martin Luther King Jr. family, they actually got a payout from the FBI in a civil case, didn't they? That's not a criminal case, but that's some admission that, yeah, that happened.
Or just like O.J. Simpson?
I saw I think it was in the early 2000s, there was a civil case. And I think the FBI actually had to pay some kind of civil case fee to the Martin Luther King family, admitting that his death was in part like, they had something to do with it. So in a civil case.
Yeah, those ones are a little dicey, right? Because sometimes in those civil cases, a lot of the time it's like a default judgment, or it's like the FBI is just not going to show up, and it's just cheaper for them to not address it and pay out the check or whatever. And then that ends up becoming sort of like de facto proof. This is the same thing
And then, yes, O.J. Simpson. Sorry, you said it. I went back to what I was saying, but yeah, that would be another big example of that.
Right, like he was acquitted in criminal trial, but then he lost in civil case, and then people point to the civil case as if it was proven that he did the murder. Which, I mean, it also is just like,
well, he wrote that book
cheaper
too.
and easier to not defend yourself against the civil cases. Yeah, if I did it. What a troll, man. There was an amazing Mad TV. I don't know if you remember Mad TV back in like the late 90s, and they had like the OJ Simpson blooper reel, and they've got him putting on the gloves, and he's like, see, it doesn't fit, and he like slips it on all the way, and he's like, oh damn. And then like everyone's like,
I'm looking at what else I wrote on the Firebird. I made Death and Rebirth, of course, is blah blah, looked cool to the untrained IMAX eye. I had the urge to listen a bit more Stravinsky, but it is kind of just, I mean, it's pretty much on the nose. Here's some pagan imagery for anyone like even slightly looking for that sort of thing. And here's the basic, death and rebirth story. It's pretty archetypal. I mean, it's almost like not so occult because it's all just like pretty on the nose. But please feel free to add something that I missed.
well, also in the first Fantasia, it starts out with paganism, and then over time, it sort of departs in a way, just like the Bald Mountain, right, where we see the first image of Chernobog. It's at the very beginning of the first Fantasia movie, not necessarily at the end. But this one, it's showing paganism win at the end of the movie. So the last thing that you see is a resurgence of paganism, according to Fantasia 2000.
So you're saying that made the spell work? Because I mean, people, I feel, again, maybe it's because I live in Japan, but I feel like religion's mostly off the map these days, but I haven't been in the Southeast for some time.
Well, so an argument could be made, though, that it's not that religion is off the map, but it's that the denial of Christ is the example of paganism winning, and that even if you're agnostic and even if you're atheist, technically that means paganism is winning because the devil tricked you into thinking that he doesn't exist, which is just a flex of his power even more than you think.
Yeah, bit of the usual suspects coming in there, but yeah, I'm just thinking I was like watching and trying to be like, is there something subtle I'm missing here? It's very on the nose and it's cool, which maybe makes it very successful as a spell, very successful as a piece of animation. Just everything in this last segment is pretty fused together.
Well, I mean, the subtle thing is that it is a real magic spell, and it's not just a little animation that you're watching in a movie, but this is legitimately casting this intent out into the world, thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of times that people have seen this. Just like every time someone watches the original Fantasia, it kind of recasts that initial spell. So now when you watch Fantasia 2000, you're kind of casting like Eisner's version of that original spell, which is probably even more evil than the original one.
See, I'm wondering if maybe the last two segments are the spell portion, and that does the trick. But it's like, well, this has to be a movie. It needs to show in a theater. Throw Sorcerer's Apprentice back in. Here, we can make this one for a little less money. We got to make this look at least kind of impressive. Go CGI some animals, and there's Fantasia 2000.
Maybe the Sorcerer's Apprentice is like the milestone of like, okay, here's where the magic starts. Like, here's us tapping back in, because every real magical ritual, as I understand it, it's almost like Tesla's like using the energy. Like you would send it out into the ionosphere and then it comes back, and then you send it out with even more, like the group of people jumping on the trampoline, and every time the person in the middle jumps, everyone else combines their energy so the person in the middle can jump even higher, and you keep doing that. That's magical rituals, repeating something, and it keeps increasing in its magic. So what the hell is more magical than literally playing frame for frame the same Sorcerer's Apprentice segment from the very first Fantasia in the second one? It's almost like, okay, here's the magic ritual starting. Here's the part that we all know, and now here's the new part.
Yeah, because if you do just take those three and call it a little 30-minute Fantasia, that works. It will take out Penn and Teller as well, but
I mean, net positive all across the board.
um, I guess we'll do a bit on Destino, which musically I could see where, because Destino, the Dali one, it didn't come in. They said it was too adult, but I'm like, musically it doesn't fit. It fits much better as its own thing because it's not a piece of classical music, which maybe at some point it was going to be. I don't know, but
right. But again, if you're thinking of fit as in the context of this being a cohesive, sequence. But if the original intent was that it's all disjointed, is just like, here's a pairing of animation and music, here's another, Destino would have fit perfectly. It would have set the tone of like, you don't know what to expect. You just saw Donald Duck, naked in the tent and doing the Curse of Ham, and now you've got Salvador Dali, and then you've got Gaia, and then you've got flamingos. Like, I kind of like that completely schizophrenic, disjointed portrayal, which we don't get because they handhold you the whole time.
But I guess it's kind of where I was saying I would like some of these isolated better. I quite enjoyed seeing Destino isolated. I really don't think this is, well, obviously it's not what the original would have looked like. It looks very computer enhanced.
Yeah, I wonder what Dali would have thought of this final version. Would this be like Stanley Kubrick watching Steven Spielberg's version of AI?
That came
being like, put me back in the ground. Like, I've seen enough.
And there's so much time difference. Dali died in the late 70s, I want to say. Maybe
no, Dali died in 1989, and they started Destino in 1946.
Right.
So he was working on this animation for longer than I've even been alive on the planet. That blows my mind, right? That's what, 42 years? I just made the cut, but yeah, this was in production for over 42 years. It doesn't necessarily look like that.
No, because I wrote a note here. Am I seeing 2000 era animators just assuming they can reference Dali paintings to fill in the gaps since Dali's no longer?
Rough. It's a little rough seeing what they did to my boy.
Yeah, I don't think Dali would have referenced all of his well, not all, but so many of his paintings in this had he had his hand on the tiller the entire time. The other one, I guess for me, not animated, but I'm just like, I feel like something like Unchi and Andalou does this a lot better for whatever reason. Have you watched that? Slicing up eyeballs?
Oh yeah, that one actually still really is hard for me to watch, even knowing that it's an old movie and it's like old techniques. Just the premise of slicing an eyeball open and seeing like the insides ooze out, man, it's rough. It's a rough watch.
It is a grape. That makes you feel better.
Well, I know what it is, but I also know what it's supposed to be. And
yeah.
Like I visualize the thing it's supposed to be in like my mind's eye, and that's the part that creeps me out.
I don't think it has anything that intense, but if you do want to do that vibe for a full hour, there's also L'Age d'Or, The New Age, which Buñuel and Dali made maybe 2 years later. That's an interesting one. But yeah, it's kind of nice to get in and out of 15 minutes of a weird non-narrative piece of Dada surrealism. So Destino, I guess the thing in the end, I'm like, oh, I like Dali. I like being reminded of Dali. It's kind of, what do they say on South Park? Member berries. You point out, oh, you remember that? So that's kind of the flaw I have with Destino. I want to like it a lot more than I actually like it.
So I love it. I really like it. I do.
Yeah, I'm very happy to hear that, but I can't say that.
I love Destino. I think that it's 10% of what it should have been. Like they didn't come anywhere close to completing it the way that it should have. Again, I almost feel like this is AI by Spielberg instead of AI versus Kubrick in that kind of a way. But there's also a weird aspect of like, it was supposed to represent baseball, and there is like a baseball element to it towards the very end, but it almost feels tacked on. And they when Bette Midler is describing it in Fantasia 2000, and by the way, Destino is not in Fantasia 2000. It didn't make the cut. So you have to go and like search for it on YouTube and find it. It might be included in like the extras.
It's in the extras.
Not in the cut, right?
Yeah.
And she talks about that this was Dali's approach on relating baseball to something. And so there is baseball imagery, but it doesn't feel like that's driving a driving narrative at any point. It was just like they finished it and it got onto the review and someone was like, "Hey, wasn't this supposed to be about baseball?" And they were like, "Ah, crap. All right, let's throw in a quick little like 10-second segment."
We shouldn't have thrown in so many Dali paintings already. That's just where I'm like, I feel like the version he would have finished, which he took too long. Let's be honest. I guess he just didn't want to finish it in the end. So,
but there is some interesting elements to Destino that I think can be broken down. So the first is that I think it represents time. I think it's like the passage of time. Go figure, Dali making a statement about time.
The
right?
melty clock guy. Sorry, limp watch guy.
Yeah,
Is that what she said?
the limp wristwatch guy. God,
okay, I'd be the. See, I would go melty clock guy, which I feel like's better. I don't know.
Well, melty clock guy is less condescending. When you say like the limpy wristwatch guy, it's almost like a cut at Dali, and it's like, who the hell are you, Bette Midler? Anyway, I don't want to turn this into like an anti-Bette Midler thing. But the woman's name is supposed to be Dahlia, which again makes sense, Dali and Dahlia. But she starts out as this like youthful, like ballerina almost figure. And then over the progression of the animation, she encounters this deity almost, and that deity is supposed to be Kronos. And this story is about Dahlia interacting with Kronos, and this is like Dahlia represents human and human desire, and this like desire to want to understand the nature of time itself. And all Kronos is time, and all he can do is kind of like suck things up and expend them. So Dahlia, as she's going through this, she goes through these different transformations, and this lines up with her merging in with like the landscape or other elements in the scene. And I think that this is representative of her like integrating. So like she goes on this spiritual journey, and it's doing this like alchemical transformation where she like brings things into herself. And one of these shows her on top of like a tortoise, going through this landscape. And I think that this is such an interesting aspect, especially if you do alchemy, because she represents like grace and human ingenuity and freedom, right? This like ballerina figure. But then she's on top of this tortoise, which is like the exact opposite of all this. It's not graceful. It's not flexible. Instead, it's like this endurance. It's this slow, steady progression, which again is a reference to time and Kronos. So Kronos, the guy that she meets, is the tortoise. And then through this whole thing at the very end, she merges with, or she actually comes out of this symbol of a bell and then goes back into it at the end, which I think also has these like connotations of, like you're talking about the reverberations in the old cathedrals, and we had the Donald Duck inside of this like biblical story of the Noah's Ark. Well, that bell is the same kind of, even in like the pagan times, but it represented like the start and the end of something. So it's kind of fitting that you see the shadow of a bell. She manifests out of it in the very beginning. She starts blending in and like absorbing and integrating herself with like this physical world around her, all under the guise of Kronos and passage of time, and then goes back into the bell. It's kind of like this self-perpetuating cycle. So that it's almost like the ball cycle, right? Or like the death birth recycle, all summarized in this one particular animation from Dali. So I don't know. I think that it's way deeper than maybe even the animators gave some of it credit, and they didn't maybe do it justice so much, but it really is like an interesting telling of Kronos.
I'm going to throw in a couple maybe Eastern inspired alternate theories, by the way. There's kind of some of the Indian things, the world's held up on a tortoise. So I'm thinking she's going through a porter living life. Kronos sends her into into this world, the physical world, and she's traveling on the earth is one thing. And the one that specifically in Japan, I'm trying to find a good explanation of this online right now so I can like do it properly. But Are you familiar with these Zen paintings trying to show enlightenment? 10 steps to tame the elephant. That sounds about right.
I know, I'm not familiar with this.
This is there's some in Tibet, there's versions in Japan, and I want to see the images, but I'm getting a very long article. Okay, I'll try to do it from memory. It's a series of paintings where someone is walking a path, and it's supposed to be the path of enlightenment, where they have to ride an elephant and tame the elephant, and then there's a monkey, and eventually they all kind of become one and achieve enlightenment. So that also went through the mind, a tortoise being sort of like an elephant. So I guess I was trying to look at this as like either she's trying to make progress through this incarnation or trying to achieve enlightenment through this method of travel is, I guess, what I was thinking of with a more sitting in Japan with an Eastern thought on it.
And there's one scene in this I didn't know what the hell to make of it, but they show ants crawling out of a hand, which then turns into a bunch of French guys with bread on their head. I was searching for meaning in this, and I couldn't figure it out. I thought maybe like bread in French is pain, so maybe it's like they've got headaches because they've got bread on the head, bread heads. I don't know. I had no idea what to make of it, and it felt like this is something Dali added and not the animators. It was like, yeah, let's like have a bunch of ants turn into French dudes, and then they've got bread on their heads.
Okay, sorry, I got something a little more concrete. It's my first explanation was kind of like hazy and weird. Zen Buddhism has 10 ox herding pictures. Once you are herding the oxes, you have achieved enlightenment. You are in control. Vajrayana Buddhism is the one with the elephant and the monkeys. The first picture has the monk holding a rope, which is mindfulness, in his left hand, and a goat in his right, runs after an elephant, led by a monkey. Here, the meditator has no control over his mind. In the second one, he almost catches up with the elephant. The third one, the monk throws a noose around the elephant's neck and it looks back. The mind is beginning to be restrained by mindfulness. The point, I guess you don't have to tame a tortoise, so maybe I don't, or do you? But yeah, you're taming this elephant and this monkey, which is, a monkey mind. That's where the concept monkey mind actually comes from, these paintings, that you have to tame the monkey mind and eventually you're all kind of chill and traveling together and you reach your destination. Although I guess in enlightenment, do you ever reach your destination? I don't know.
Well, the ox version of that goes back into like that pagan fertility worship, like, the two-horned god aspect of, if you know how to work with fertility rites, then you can reach enlightenment. I've seen that as one of the portrayals of this sort of like grand unifying theory that any culture that worshiped the two-horned animal was essentially spawned from like that same original fertility cult.
I was about to say, well, I don't know about in Japan. I was like, well, we do have a lot of really weird fertility shrines and fertility festivals. So I was like, actually, that sounds like a nail on the head.
I mean, go figure that people are fascinated by just the concept of procreation and end up worshiping the concept of procreation and abundance. So, I mean, maybe the common thread here isn't like a cultural origin story, but it's just that we all have like these human brains that are somewhat constructed the same way and they kind of fall into the same patterns, so we're all like boobs, you know what I mean?
No, I was about to throw out Japan has an aging and declining population, so maybe they need to focus on procreation a little bit more.
I mean, maybe this is where, the fact that not only are you gonna, unfortunately, and I don't mean this in a bad way, Matt, but you're gonna die and burn in hell for eternity, but also the lack of religion in Japan. Yeah, like you guys are just gonna all die out and there's not gonna be anyone to take care of anyone, and it's just because you abandoned religion so far that you didn't even revert to paganism. You just reverted to nothing at all, and now you're all just gonna perish.
Thomas, all the good bands are in hell.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I don't know, do you think Huey Lewis and the News at least makes it to heaven?
Yeah, of course they do. They don't rock as
That's
hard.
not horrible. There's some really bad metal bands that I would rather listen to Huey Lewis and the News over them.
I got a Huey Lewis CD somewhere in there I got for like 50 cents. It's the hits. So Sorry for lost. I had something I was going to say, and couldn't have been that important. Where were we? Japan, the fertility rights. This story can't be true. It's on CNN. Let's see if the headline's still there. It was something insane. It was like by 2150, like every Japanese will have the family name Sato. I'm like, that. Oh, there it is. No, here it is. Japanese people could all be called Sato by 2531. Study warns. That can't be right.
2531. You know what? Let's just focus on whether or not it's going to rain on Friday. And then once you get that right, like 20 times in a row, then we can start talking about predictions 500 years in the future.
Yeah. A movement has changed the rules. Wives take on their. Oh yeah, this is weird. There's this whole controversy in Japan. One, same-sex marriage is currently a controversy in Japan. That's weird. The other one is this controversy where the wife must take her husband's name in Japan. Like you can't do it the other way. You can't keep your name. But I'm like, my wife's kept her name for 17 years now. So it's weird because it's this big controversy. I'm like, well, we don't have that problem. How do we slip through the cracks? I don't know. We got married in Japan.
You're not Japanese. Yeah, you're just finding this out now, but that means you're not really Japanese.
Yeah, that might be the case. It's just kind of weird. I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, the reason we did that is one, I don't care, and two, if she's Japanese and uses my name, anytime she goes to a bank or anywhere, she's going to have a 5-minute, explanation and conversation about her name. So it's like, just don't change it. Yeah. And that worked. It might be because I'm a foreigner, yes. But yeah.
Well, does that make her crypto American or does that make you crypto Japanese?
It makes her crypto American more because she applied for a green card once and she was using my name a bit in America. So that's crypto American. Yeah. But I guess did you want to go any more on Destino?
I just wish that it was more about baseball, as I was promised.
I do too. I'm just like, I think that's maybe where Dali would have made it more like original, because people were just like, well, it's got to feel like Dali. Let's make it feel like Dali. But Dali himself wouldn't have felt that need,
That claim did not elevate Bette Midler in my mind anymore. So this movie has done Bette Midler a disservice.
Maybe part of the spell is Disney saying, okay, this is how, as a corporate entity, we're going to like mildly lie to you for the new century. I mean, not that they weren't doing the last one, but here's the flavor of us lying to you in this century when we tell you about how you're going to get an annual pass at Disneyland,
Right. And man, this movie starts out with a lie. It says, here's the 3 types of music, and the way they define all 3. Let's just call us an oversimplification a lie. But even if we give them that one, then they say, and this whole movie is about the 3rd kind, that is just about tonality. And here's an example of us completely contradicting that within 3 seconds. Here's a story based on music that doesn't have a story.
With butterflies. Now there's a story. So like I said, I felt like the later ones I felt they had intimated that we would be getting all 3 kinds of music. But yeah, right out the gate, that was not the 3rd kind, They had a story to go with. Where in the original Fantasia, maybe the original Fantasia had explained it better, where I knew we would be seeing all 3 kinds. And I would just like putting that on to 2000, but 2000 itself doesn't make that distinction. Like you're supposed to remember. I think Paul Frees or whoever it was in the original does make the distinction that here's the next kind, here's the next kind.
No, well, this one has Penn and Teller, so that goes out the window.
And they didn't explain it as well. So I think you're right. And I'm just like taking my knowledge from the original Fantasia and plastering onto this one. But in the case of this movie, they're kind of, misguiding you. And again, if they don't misguide you there, they misguide you later. They're like, here's the cooler movie you're not getting, and so on.
And I do think that the logical next step in the sequence, like Fantasia 3, whatever the hell they end up calling it, should be AI generated.
Probably. Some people hate that idea. I hate that idea, honestly, but
right, but it would be
let the computer make it. Yeah, if I'm
it's out with the old, in with the new, and if you want, so if Fantasia 2000 in a very crude way is like out with the old hand animated way, the old cell animation, and in with 3D renderings and like all these new techniques, even to the point of like, it doesn't look great, but look at us flexing these new muscles and these new skills. So what would be the version that would kick 3D out and usher in another new type of animation technology. Like literally, what else is there once you say, okay, kick out 2D, kick out 3D? Like I guess in my monkey brain, all I can think of is AI is that next evolution. They might already be working on it and want this, but they're gonna have to wait for like the Luddite masses to like be accepting of AI art and AI music before they can release it. So that might be the next big magical spell, is to like convince people that the new AI Disney is just as good as the old Disney.
I do want to throw out kind of when we say AI, and you've worked with AI a lot more than I have. I've just basically done a little bit of podcast artwork with it. Excuse me. But are we saying AI is there is a human user that is making prompts, changing things, tweaking things? Or are we thinking AI where we just let the computer do it all in about 10 years? What's your vision of that?
I think the latter. I think right now, all of the prompting and the person that's like crafting these things, like at a certain, so like right now, the AI generates the images or generates the music or generates the text based on that prompting, because right now AI is just being trained to create the thing that the prompt is meant to create. But now the next iteration is that after AI is good enough that it can take any prompt and reliably make good music, art, text, whatever out of it, the next step is that the AI is going to learn how to write its own prompts. And then you don't need the person in between anymore. It'll just crank out objectively pleasant gestalt theory and reinforced visuals. And like us right now, like we're convincing ourselves that the prompter is like, I'm doing all the work. You know what I mean? It's like, nah, dude, like you're literally just putting together like an IKEA how to step by step. And the second that it clicks in the computer's brain, it's like, oh, I don't need you anymore. Like, oh, this is gestalt theory. Oh, this is music theory. All right, let's do this thing.
Now, do you think that leaves us in a permanent, uncanny valley of mediocrity? Is the computer going to be able to make something actually compelling?
I think so, 100%. I think that we give ourselves too much credit for like how unique and special snowflakes we are for a physical entity that sees less than 1% of the visible light spectrum. We are so overwhelmed with how real things look. It's like, dude, you're seeing like 0.03% of visible light and you're impressed by this? Like, you know what I mean? So there's that element to it, but I think the biggest part, and as AI progresses, is everyone's going to become like the ultimate curator. Like you're going to know, like right now you put together a playlist, and that playlist means a lot to you, but maybe no one else on the planet would value your playlist as much, even though they like the individual songs. They might not like them in the order that you think makes is like the perfect. And now just extrapolate, not just a playlist, but now it's like, you like, I'm just going to throw out artists, you know, don't be offended if you don't like any of these, but you love, you know, Eminem's voice and like what he says, but you also really like Katy Perry's like background music. But then you also really like, you know, all these different elements. Maybe you really like the Steven Seagal blues album that he came out with, and I'm sure you've got a copy of somewhere. But now if AI knows that those are the three things that you like the most, it's going to create a song that can encompass what you love about Eminem and Katy Perry and Steven Seagal, and then combine that into a thing that you will absolutely love, but maybe no one else on the planet will ever appreciate it as much as you. But that's going to be the next big iteration, where it's like there's no more water cooler talk about your favorite movie, because your favorite movie had Nick Cage in it fighting against, you know, James Earl Jones, and my favorite movie had, you know, just Nick Cage and 10,000 other versions of Nick Cage in it. Every movie has Nick Cage in the future. All AI movies, they're all going to have Nick Cage in them, is the point here.
But
I think that's so it's not necessarily like, can it make something better? Because I think that all media we consume is freaking Taco Bell. It's like, okay, you got the hard shell versus the soft shell. You still get all the same ingredients. They just kind of like mix it around a little different, and you convince yourself that, oh, a taco is not a burrito. You know, it's crunchy. How could it be a burrito? And it's like, I don't know. It's like the same. I think that that's kind of where media consumption is going to end up leading. So yeah, if Disney wants to crank out an AI movie, it's really just going to be better than like one of those stupid best hits TV shows where they're like, now let's show you clips of, you know, 3-minute segments of every episode up until now because we didn't know what to do for this episode. Well, imagine if those clips were all your favorite clips, and it only showed them to you when you watched it. And if I watched it, I'd see different clips. So I think that's where it's headed. And it's more of like curating for us, not creating, but curating.
Of course, then you're going to be completely siloed about talking about media with other people, like you said. It's now impossible to talk to other people about the media you consume, which is
or I guess in this weird version of my fictional reality, it's like if Kanye West, doesn't come out with a new album, he releases his new like AI model training set. So now when you load up, Beethoven, you like click on the new Kanye West model to this, and now you get the Kanye West version of Beethoven's Fifth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm sorry, you made me think of the disco one. I mean, not that sounds like Kanye West.
Oh man, now I'm thinking of Bach on Moog on Bach, or no,
yeah.
Beethoven and Bach. I can't remember which one it was.
Switched on Bach.
Yeah.
That's some fun
what a
stuff.
dude. Whenever I first saw that record album in the store, I was like, I have to own this, even if I don't like it. This is the coolest thing ever.
Well, I hope you liked it somewhat.
I did like it. I did. Although it's not something that I think you could just like put on every day or like put it on your gym album. You got to be in a real special mood to want to hear Bach on like Moog.
Yeah, a Malcolm McDowell sort of mind, I guess.
Yeah, you gotta be in Clockwork Orange mode.
Yeah. Which honestly, I those are my favorite compositions from Carlos from around that time. Like was it Mindscapes or whatever? It's that 9-minute track on Clockwork soundtrack. That's some evil, not evil, but some maybe evil, some scary programming music. Sure.
So if you don't like AI or the concept of AI, just imagine though a world in which you can tell AI like, I really like Clockwork Orange and I really like Fantasia. Do it. Like make those things one thing and let me watch it. And that doesn't sound like the worst possible future. We're not getting flying cars, so I'll settle for this.
I guess the good mind experiment for that is just like the holodeck on Star Trek. That's, you give it a few vague prompts, it does it. Maybe you tweak a couple things, but the holodeck's doing the work, and it's showing you this thing. If you're doing history, it's like, here's history. The computer's giving you history. You could tweak it a little bit, but you just assume this is correct because the computer's telling you it's correct. Not a merry man. I guess we'll wind down for today. What's going on in your universe?
Man, lots of big things lately. So last weekend I did a live show with Sam Tripoli and a whole bunch of other people. It'll take like an hour to list all the names out. But shout out to everyone that was there at a live show. It sounds like we might try and do something a little bit more regular, but that was a signing party for Chaos Twins. So if you don't know what Chaos Twins is, it's a all ages comic book series that has two sisters fighting against reptilian overlords that are using weaponized nostalgia against us, kind of like what Disney does. And they have the support of their cryptid friends. They fight with Nessie and Bigfoot and Chupacabras. It's a really awesome series that I've been working on with Sam Tripoli for a couple years now. So that's one of the big ones. I also just had an interview with David Icke, which is like a huge bucket list item for me. And I don't know if you're familiar with David Icke's work. He's the one that popularized the whole premise of like shape-shifting reptilian aliens that are like stealing our souls.
I've read about 6 of his books.
Okay. So that was huge, man. That's like, I'm still like shaking and getting over it. Like I'll never wash my hands again with the mouse that I clicked on to talk to him in the StreamYard. So like, yeah, that's a huge one. And then the other big one is that The Chosen One at chosenwan.com, a comic book that I've been working on with Juan. And this one also has Sam Tripoli in it. He makes a quick little cameo appearance. It's also got Alex Stein in it. I don't know if you know who Alex Stein is, a very controversial political comedian here in the state. He goes to like public sort of like government hall meetings and raps about very inappropriate things in front of them. It's something to behold.
I have heard about a podcast. Now you said that, I do remember.
So that's just a little smattering of the big things going on in my life right now. Chaos Twins, David Icke, and Chosen One.
If you do want me to brainwash you with my questionable brainwashing music, that'll send you to hell. I just put out a bit more of that. It's at rovingsagemedia.bandcamp.com. I guess since this is a musical episode, I'll make it a musical plug. There's also some rock and roll there, some folk rock and weird electronic stuff in the conflagration of Nibiru. I can't say the title of my own album. That's depressing. Since we have been getting cut off after when the recording ends, and it's a few listeners might be interested. Did we talk about Doug Live when we talked about Doug?
Doug Live?
Doug Live was a stage show based on Disney's Doug that ran from March 15th, 1999 to May 12th, 2001 at Disney's Hollywood Studios. And the images from it are mildly terrifying.
This doesn't even ring a bell. And I would have been there at that time and fascinated with Doug. Actually, no, wait, when did it start?
99 to 2001.
Man, I just missed the cutoff of this. I would have been all about that. Even if it were creepy, I would have been about that. But I know I didn't know about this.
Anyway, all I had to type into Google here was Doug Live, and I got some pretty whack images. So there's a rabbit hole to send you away with, and our listeners if they are into Doug.
Yeah, and to any of our angels out there that have been sending us these unknowingly obtained work prints. If you've got footage of the original Doug Live, I would love to see that.
YouTube looks like it has a little bit for you.
And you said it was at Universal Studios?
No. Disney MGM.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense.
It said Hollywood Studios, but it was Disney MGM at the time. So, yeah. Okay, well, we're going to sign off, burn the earth, and everything will be reborn.
American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all of that and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
Explore the unique with Paranoid American sticker sheets. Unearth tales of cryptids, cults, and mysteries through each sticker. These won't last long. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
All American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all of that and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
What the heck are you waiting for? Discover the extraordinary with Paranoid American sticker sheets. From cryptids in the night to cults out of sight, each sticker is a unique find. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
Paranoid. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain, give you the flight, my plane, paper the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real, you will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Matters not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when a beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.